Ed, it's a great joy to welcome you to the state of Illinois and to share some time with us on this special gathering. Let me take a moment to introduce our audience to you.
Sure.
In the gatherings that we are going to have all across the state of Illinois are pastors and staff members, leaders, elders, and deacons from churches all across this state. And they represent the smallest home mission church that just got planted to our more established and larger churches. It's a great privilege for us to meet with them. They are heart and soul of the Assemblies of God in Illinois, and they are the people who are on the ground every week and making it work. So we salute them. That's and right. We're delighted to share time with them. And it's a special joy to welcome Ed.
Thank you so much.
I'm really excited that you're here, Ed. I've had the opportunity to sit under your teaching on a couple of occasions, and you have always brought just great wisdom to every one of those settings. Help me understand the full width of your background.
Well, I was born and reared in New York City, came to Christ as a young man, got involved in church planting early on as a pastor, planted churches in New York and Pennsylvania, later on in Georgia. I've had the privilege of being a seminary professor. I work for a mission agency, and now I'm the president of Lifeway Research. Really, our goal is, and Larry, you mentioned that we're dealing with pastors, talking to pastors and church leaders. Our goal is to help churches. We work for movements. We serve our churches, but we all know that God has chosen the church. Ephesians 3:10 tells us God has chosen the church to make known His manifold wisdom. And so my goal, my desire is to help churches in the mission God's given them to make His name and fame more widely known.
Just to put a little perspective on it then, Ed, let's just kind of plunge into the whole topic. And I'd like to start with the wide-angle view. And I'd like to hear Ed's temperature reading about the state of the church in the USA, this great mission field in this wonderful country, the birthplace of sending churches, mission agencies to the world, and yet now we're focusing on the churches of this great country. What is your experience in reading on the status of today's church?
Well, it's difficult to say, and I'm because I'm encouraged that the gospel's still true. I've read the last chapter of the book. I know how it turns out, but I think ultimately we have to recognize that the church in North America is not doing well. The church in North America is in decline. We're the only continent in the world where the church is not growing when you count Eastern and Western Europe together. We are seeing churches close. More than 50 churches close their doors each week in the United States, and they cease to exist. And so I don't think we can have a great enthusiasm about how the church is growing. Now, there are some that are growing, and I'm excited about that. But even in many of those cases, we see the ones that are growing are often growing through transfer growth from churches that are maybe dying or declining at a faster rate. There are a few denominations that are growing, but not many, and even those that are growing at such a slow rate. So I think ultimately we know the gospel's true, we know God's still on His throne, but we have to recognize that the church here in our country is struggling. We need to rediscover our mission, rediscover our biblical purpose, and live that out where we are and engage the culture with the good news of Jesus Christ.
And then you've had the privilege of working with our Assemblies of God Fellowship very intricately. Narrow that focus a little bit. How does that fit in the landscape across multi-church?
Well, I would say Assemblies of God is doing better than many. It's doing better than many denominations, fellowships, movements, experiencing some slight growth. However, as a whole, still the majority of churches are either plateaued or declining. I know we see nationally, we see some that are growing through conversion growth, but not a large number of such. So I think we have to be careful. We have to be tempered to say the Assemblies of God is growing slowly, but I don't know that that's something we want to celebrate greatly. It's not just us, but all of our movements are growing. And I think the Assemblies of God grew at much faster paces in the past. In the 40s and the 50s, we've seen that, and other eras as well. So slow growth, God can be working in slow growth, no growth, or decline. But I think ultimately if we're going to reach North America, we need the Assemblies and other movements and denominations to see their evangelistic outreach increase drastically and their evangelistic effectiveness increase multiple times as well.
Gary, let's put a little Illinois face on that. What does it look like here in Illinois as a whole?
Well, Ed's numbers are confirmed here in Illinois. Currently, more than 60% of our churches are either plateaued or declining. And of those that are growing, only about 10 to 12% are actually growing through conversion growth. And as you said, Ed, that is certainly nothing to write home about. How do we begin changing that culture around? What can we do? Do we just sit here hopelessly saying this is the way it is, or can we be more proactive about things?
I hope we don't just get to the point when we pine away saying things are stuck, because they don't need to be. You know, we can look to the Scriptures to find the answers. We can listen to the leadership of the Holy Spirit to get the direction. And so I don't think so. I'm not discouraged. I'm a realist, but at the same time I'm an optimist because I believe God's at work. And so I think what it has to boil down to, it has to start with an attitude change. I think ultimately that we have lost the passion for lost people that we once had in North America. And I think it's more than that, but I think that's a big part of it. And I think people have to change what drives them, what gives them, what they wake up in the morning, what breaks their heart at night. You know, when Jesus walked down that mountainside outside Jerusalem, he looked and he said they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he wept because his heart broke for lostness. I think our heart needs to break for lostness. I'll be honest, I don't see that much. I see churches across North America, evangelical churches and others across North America, who are hurting that their preferences aren't being met, that their needs aren't being catered to, and I think they're hurting for the wrong thing. Let me give you a strange example. I have funny shaped feet. My feet will, they kind of stick out on both sides. So I buy shoes and I wear them for 3 weeks and they hurt for all 3 weeks. I'll get a blister on both sides of my feet. Eventually the shoe will wear out to the place where it's comfortable, but I'll wear those shoes forever. My wife makes fun of me. She says, you wear them, they're all, the holes get bigger and bigger in the spring. It's like the size of a quarter. In the summer, it's 3/4. In the fall, I'm walking on sock. And then the winter will come and I'll step into a puddle of freezing cold water. And that cold water will rush up between my toes and it'll be so cold it hurts. And then I'll go change my shoes. And here's the principle. People never change until the pain of staying the same grows greater than the pain of change. And I'm convinced that people and churches and movements will not change until the pain of staying the same grows greater than the pain of change. It's going to be hard to change. But I think ultimately more and more people in the church today are beginning to say, you know what, it breaks our heart we're not seeing people transformed by the gospel. It breaks our heart that our churches are dying. And when we hurt for that, rather than our own needs, our own preferences, our own desires, then I think that's going to be the first step in turning around our churches.
So that's kind of the starter button, is that awareness, that wake up. And I know as I sit with church boards, talk about pastoral transition, we often ask the what question. What's next?
Right.
What's the need? Where are you headed? That kind of thing. And I will say in a refreshing way, Ed, I am hearing leaders, lay leaders of churches saying, most of all, we want to see new people reached for our church. And I think I'm translating that well, in that they are saying, we want to see people whose lives are changed by Christ's grace and become a part of this wonderful family. That's the wake-up style.
And I think that's the good thing. I think ultimately part of what these pastors and church leaders can do is to help communicate to their congregations that it is not normal in the kingdom of God that we would be stagnant, not reaching people, and inwardly focused. And we've done that for so long, it's become normal now. What's normal? We've forgotten the normal church life. We've forgotten the normal Christian life. And I think ultimately, the people in your churches, the people in churches across this country, so many of them want to see people reach for the gospel. But the challenge is they have to recognize that doing things the same way, expecting different results, and we've all heard the cliche, it's a sign of insanity. And it is. So what has to happen is we can have the burden to reach, but what that has to lead to is change, and change is hard. And again, and Comeback Churches is really a book about change. It's about changes in what people did, what people thought, how people acted, and that may be the hardest thing. What many people want is they want to reach people for Jesus, but not get uncomfortable, and I just don't see it working that way. Change makes us uncomfortable, and we're going to have to change to reach people for Christ.